Sometimes I look in someone else's life. And I wonder why can't that be me? Sometimes I look in someone else's life, and I wish I had the things I see. But I say, the things you have are meant for you. The way you thinking ain't the truth.
How are you? A good Tavok, Shavua Tov, a good week to you. It's Sunday. We've got a beautiful daf to learn today. What a pretty song that is. We're working our way through Joey Newcomb's new album called Big Avoidus, right? Big Avoidus, big worship, big service, the big privilege of serving God that we have. And that song, a beautiful reinterpretation. Often you heard it sung as Ma Tovu, right? How good are your tents, O Israel? The beautiful blessing said upon the Jewish people by the prophet of the non-Jews who was brought by a wicked king to curse the Jews and ended up blessing the Jews. How beautiful are your tents, how good are your tents, O Israel, your dwelling places, O Jacob. How good are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel? And there are many interpretations of that, but Joey is saying sometimes I feel like, other people have more, I have less, and I could get bummed out about it, and what's the cure for that? I look at other people and I say, how good are your tents? How good a portion God gave you, and I'm happy for you. Everybody got the portion that they needed to have, that they were destined to have, that God blessed us to have. And sometimes it's hard to see, it's hard to understand why a particular day or a particular year or a particular lifetime is given to me as a blessing. We may not be able to see it in this world, but if we have faith that God has a purpose for every mission, every day that we live, there's something to it. It's for our good. If we don't understand it, then we can rejoice in it, both our own portion and the portions of others, right? Then we really empathize with everyone, and we're feeling that what's good for you, I celebrate, right? What's tough for me, I have faith that it'll be good. And therefore, what's tough for you, I have faith that it'll be good. It'll be good in the end. And if it's not good, it's not the end. There's a beautiful story behind that I heard from Nina, but we don't have time for that tonight. Let's light up the darkness. All right. And if you haven't heard the shofar yet today, it's Elul, the last month of the Hebrew year. We hear the shofar every day. It's a wake-up call. Wake up for things like this. Nothing like a ram's horn. Okay, it's working. All right, who's with us? Who is with us on a Sunday? John in Maine, Guy in Ohio, Ira in South Carolina, Lucy in Minnesota, James in Annapolis, Bill in Missouri, Stephen in New Hampshire, Clarice in El DF, Ciudad de Mexico, Bella in Florida, Tom in PA, Melissa in Great Neck, Ira in South Carolina, Laura in Oklahoma, Sharon in New Jersey. Hold on, these glasses, that might not be the right glasses for me. Bill, I might not be here tomorrow. So happy Labor Day, everybody. Amen. Nancy in North Carolina, Yitzhak in Minnesota, Paul in Minneapolis, Antic in Seattle, Paul in the Great Northwest. Paula likes the glasses. Shandor in the Bronx. Thank you, Paula. Frank in the Pocono Mountains. Paul in Chicago. Amen, I needed that. Yosef in Lowell, Mass. All right, great to have you all with us. Marjorie in Georgia. All right, I'll see if I can make these glasses work. They're transitional, but they transition at a different place than my smaller glasses. Okay, where are we holding? This is Daf Samech, page 60, here in Tractate Kesubos. We're in chapter 5, working our way through Mishnah number 4. Mishnah number 4. Yes, we are. Right, we're picking it up here. Working our way through Mishnah number 4. We're generally involved in the rights and obligations of the spouses to each other as established, whether explicitly or by decree, within the marriage contract. We learned yesterday that one of the wife's obligations is to nurse the child. Now, if she brings the child to a wet nurse, she can do that. If they get divorced, right, and she already started nursing the child, and for the safety of the child, she has to keep nursing the child. But since she's no longer married to the husband and she doesn't owe him under the marriage contract, because they're no longer bound by it once they're divorced, so she's obligated to nurse the child, but he'll have to pay her. And from that, we know that a mom nursing her child is a form of work, a serious form of work, a big commitment. I remember we have kids. It's a huge commitment, and it is one of the many, jobs that a woman does within a marriage. Whether she's going to a workplace and earning or not, there's a lot that she's doing. There's a hard work, and it should be understood as something that, were it not an obligation of the marriage contract, it would be paid well, right? Because it's tough work. Okay. So with regard to an obligation to nurse, as explained in the marriage contract, we're starting to define some of the parameters of what nursing is. So yesterday we learned that until, if a child has been given to a mother to start nursing, and then she changes her mind and doesn't want to nurse, or the couple divorces and because of that she wants to stop nursing. But if the child already recognizes the mother, then it becomes dangerous for her to stop nursing, and that's when she would be compelled to continue nursing. And when does a child recognize its mother? From when does it recognize its mother in such a way that it would reject nursing from other women and it would endanger itself for that reason? Yesterday they argued. One said 30 days, one said 50 days, another said some months. And then basically they said that's different for every child. Some children will sort of imprint on the mom, recognize the mom sooner than other children. And it's from when the child recognizes. Now, apropos the period of time during which a child nurses, so we talked about from when it starts, what's the minimum, what about the maximum? These are just a little dirty, but they work better for me. So we've talked about the minimum that you'd need to nurse or to keep nursing because of the imprinting. They might talk about the minimum and that it's healthy to nurse. This was before formula, right? So it was either going to be the mom was going to nurse or a wet nurse was going to nurse, but a woman was going to nurse the baby. So who's it going to be and for how long? What's the maximum that a baby should be nursed? Apropos the period of time during which a child nurses, the Gemara continues to debate different aspects of this matter. The sages taught in a Baraisa, so we're on page 60a, several lines from the top. The sages taught in a Baraisa, a child may continue to nurse until the age of 24 months. And from this point forward, if he continues to nurse, he is like one who nurses from a non-kosher animal, as a woman's milk is forbidden to anyone other than a small child, according to the statement of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Yehoshua says, a child may continue to nurse even for 4 or 5 years, and this is permitted. However, if he ceased nursing, meaning if the child was weaned, the nursing ended, after 24 months, and then he resumed nursing, then he is like one who nurses from a non-kosher animal, which is prohibited. So the master said in the Baraisa, from this point forward, he is like one who nurses from a non-kosher animal. Now the Gemara raises a contradiction from a Baraisa. So what they said so far basically is there's some maximum time. Some say 24 months. After that, he should stop nursing. Others say if he wants to keep nursing, can do it even until he's 4 or 5 years old. But once he stops nursing, if he goes back to nursing, then it would be prohibited the same way it's prohibited for any non-baby, right? And so the idea there is only babies, maybe infants, maybe very small toddlers, are allowed to nurse from their mothers. but no other people, right? No other children or adults are permitted to drink milk by nursing directly from a woman. The master said in the Baraisa, from this point forward, he is like one who nurses from a non-kosher animal. Now, the Gemara raises a contradiction from a Baraisa. One might have thought that the milk of bipeds, meaning humans, would be non-kosher, like that of a non-kosher animal, right? Like you can drink milk from a cow, and that's kosher, and you can drink milk from a goat, and you can drink milk from a sheep. You cannot drink milk from a gorilla. You can't drink milk from any mammal that is not a kosher mammal. You certainly can't drink pig's milk, for example. So we might have thought that if human milk falls into the category of the milk of all these other animals that are not kosher animals, right? We don't eat humans, so presumably the milk of a human would not be kosher like these other non-kosher animals. So one might have thought that the milk of bipeds would be non-kosher like that of a non-kosher animal based on a logical derivation. Just as with regard to a non-kosher animal where you were lenient with regard to its contact, meaning that it does not render people or items impure through contact when it is alive. And yet you were stringent with regard to its milk, right? So if a non-kosher animal comes into contact with consecrated food that needs to remain tahor, ritually pure, it will not render it impure. Its carcass would, but a living non-kosher animal does not impart impurity. And yet the milk of a non-kosher animal is not kosher. You can't drink it. So by an a fortiori inference, now with regard to a person, where a person who is impure, who happens to be impure because he touched some source of impurity, for example, he touched a dead human, so now he's ritually impure, and he's going to have to go through a purification process and immerse in a mikvah, await nightfall, and then he'll be pure again. Until he does that, while he's impure, if he touches consecrated food, if he touches teruma, he'll render it impure, right? So if a non-kosher animal that is not able, while it's alive, to touch teruma and make it impure, and yet its milk is not kosher, all the more so a human who can become impure and who can render teruma impure by touching it, all the more so its milk should be not kosher, according to this analogy. All the more so. Now, an a fortiori inference would indicate that with regard to a person where you were stringent about contact, as people can render other people and objects impure even when they're alive, one should be stricter. So isn't it logical that you should be stringent with regard to his milk and that human milk would be not kosher? And this is as the verse states, but this you shall not eat of those that only chew the cud, or of those that only part of the hoof, the camel, because it chews the cud but does not part the hoof, it is impure for you. And that somewhat superfluous word, it, teaches that it alone is impure, but the milk of bipeds is not impure. Rather, it is kosher. And furthermore, one might have thought that I would exclude the milk of humans from the prohibition against consumption, as this issue does not apply equally to everyone, since only women produce milk, but I should not exclude from the prohibition human blood, which does apply equally to everyone. All humans have blood, only female humans have milk. Consequently, the verse states it with regard to a camel, to say that it alone is impure, whereas the blood of bipeds is not impure, but rather it is kosher. Now, this whole thing is kind of confusing when you hear it for the first time. How could the milk of a human female not be kosher if that's what babies drink? It is kosher. Of course it's kosher. The baby's drinking a kosher liquid. That is meant for it. What they're really saying is, can an adult drink the milk of humans? And basically where the law comes out is, if you drank human milk from a bottle, right, from a vessel, from a glass, it would be kosher, because human milk is not unkosher in itself. But it is prohibited for anyone but a child who has not yet been weaned to nurse from its mother's breast. If anyone else is drinking milk from a human breast, that is prohibited, not because the milk is not kosher, but because that action is prohibited. Blood is if you drink milk from the body, not permitted. But if you were to taste human milk that came in a glass, that would be permitted. Blood is the opposite, right? So if you kind of suck on a wound, or you have a cut in your mouth and there's blood in your mouth because you were brushing your teeth too hard and your gums bled a little bit, and then you swallow that blood, did you just eat something not kosher? No, you did not. Blood that is still attached to the body is kosher if you happen to swallow it. Normally you're thinking about your own blood, like in your mouth, or you're doing something medical, where we probably spit it out anyway, but if you were like sucking out poison. But, if somebody's blood left their body and collected in a glass and you drank some blood like that, that would not be kosher. And you see, that's why blood is the opposite of milk in this regard. And Rav Sheshes said about this ruling, there is not even a rabbinic command to refrain from consuming human milk. Therefore, this presents a contradiction to the statement that a child who nurses beyond a certain age is like one who nurses from a non-kosher animal. And by the way, that shows you that, something that, who knows if they could have contemplated this or did it. I don't know. Maybe they pumped, like a woman pumped so that the milk could be caught in a container and the father could feed it later in the night, the way modern women do. Maybe they did that in ancient times. I don't know. But that shows you that it would be kosher, right? So milk that's captured, expressed from the mom, and it's contained in a container and it could be kept fresh and then, fed to the child later. That presents no difficulty. Right, so Rav Sheshes says there's not even a rabbinic command to refrain from consuming human milk in that manner. So therefore, this presents a contradiction to the statement that a child who nurses beyond a certain age is like one who nurses from a non-kosher animal. And the Gemara answers, La kasha, this is not difficult, as this statement that the milk is permitted is referring to when it has been removed from the woman's body. And that statement that the milk is forbidden is referring to when it had not been removed. Fundamentally, human milk is a permitted substance. However, it is prohibited by rabbinic law for anyone other than a very young child to nurse directly from a woman's breasts. And one who does so is considered like one who consumes milk from a non-kosher animal. The prohibition is expressed in terms of one who's not a small child and nurses from a woman is like one who nurses from a non-kosher animal, who's drinking the milk of a non-kosher animal. Not just nurses, but consumes the milk of a non-kosher animal. It's likened to that. And the opposite applies to blood. Human blood that has been removed from the body is forbidden, but if it has not yet been removed, it is permitted, as it is taught in a baraisa. If some human blood was on a loaf of bread, right, like you were eating and you were cutting some bread and you cut your finger, and some of your blood spilled on the bread, so you would remove the blood from the bread, but it wouldn't render the rest of the slice impure. Right? As is taught, if some blood was on a loaf of bread, one scrapes off the blood and then he may eat the bread. Since the blood was detached from the body, it is forbidden by rabbinic law. But if the blood was between the teeth, he may suck it and swallow it without concern, as the blood is permitted if it had not been removed from the body. So the master said in the aforementioned baraisa, Rabbi Yehuda says a child may continue to nurse even for 4 or 5 years. But isn't it taught in a different baraisa that Rabbi Yehuda says even if he can carry his package on his shoulder, he can continue to nurse? And the Gemara answers, well, this is not a contradiction, since both this and that are one, the same measure, and the difference between them is only semantic. So Rav Yosef said, well, the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Right? So, until the child is about 4 or 5, even if he can carry his own bag on his shoulder, it's permitted. He's still considered like a little kid. It's going to be unusual for kids to nurse that late, but it's not prohibited. On the same topic, it is taught in a baraisa, Rabbi Marinos says, one who is coughing due to an illness that requires milk, but he did not have milk available, he may suck milk directly from an animal's udder on Shabbos, as long as it's a kosher animal. Are you allowed to milk a cow on Shabbos? Absolutely not. That's a prohibited labor. But this person needs the milk for his illness. Now, if he's critically ill, then we'll even desecrate Shabbos to get the milk for him and we'll milk the cow. But it would be preferable if we could get the milk that he needs by expressing it from the cow in a non-usual manner. Like, for example, this person nurses directly from the cow. Normally would never do that, but on Shabbos, so that it's an unusual manner of milking, rather than doing the labor of milking the cow, just getting the milk that he needs, is exactly the amount that he needs in this manner, that would be permitted because he has this need. even if he wasn't critically ill, right? You would still allow him to do this because you're doing it in the non-usual way. Where am I? Extracting in an unusual manner. Although milking is an example of the labor of extracting a subcategory of the primary category of threshing, it is prohibited by Torah law only when the labor is performed in its typical manner. One who nurses from an animal is extracting milk in an atypical manner. And such labor is prohibited by rabbinic law, but in a situation involving pain, like one who is coughing, right? He's not in danger of dying, but you're easing his pain by getting him some milk. So there the sages did not issue a decree. And Rav Yosef said the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Marinos. Ruling similar to the previous law is taught in a Baraisa. Nachum of Galia says, if a drainage pipe is blocked by weeds, kashkashin, and grass, preventing water from running through the pipe, one may crush them with his foot in private on Shabbos without concern that he is performing the labor of preparing a vessel. Right, so like you're walking your property and it's raining hard and you see that the drainage ditch is blocked and it's going to cause a flood in the field that could kill the whole crop and have a devastating impact on the income of the family. In that situation, you could just sort of like step on the blockage and crush it so that the water is able to sweep through and probably sweep away the blockage. And save the field, even though normally you wouldn't be allowed to finish the vessel, the drainage vessel, as it were, by clearing out the debris. Here you could do it in this atypical manner, just crushing it with your foot in order to avoid the substantial financial loss that would ensue otherwise. Now, what is the reason for this leniency? This is an example of repairing a vessel in an unusual manner, just like drinking from the cow's udder directly is milking it in an unusual manner, since it is uncommon to fix an item without using a tool or one's hands, just his feet. Performing labor in an unusual manner is ordinarily prohibited by rabbinic decree, but in a situation involving financial loss, sages did not issue a decree. So Rabbi Yosef said the law is in accordance with Nachum of Galia. These are three lenient opinions in a row. So the Gemara continues discussing the aforementioned Baraisa, which states, if the child ceased nursing after 24 months and then he resumed, this is like one who nurses from a non-kosher animal. The Gemara asks, how long must he cease nursing to be considered weaned? After how much time of not nursing would you say, okay, this kid has stopped nursing, he has been weaned, and then if he goes back, that would be prohibited and we would stop him from doing it. It's time to start eating regular food. How long must he be off the nursing, as it were? So Rabbi Yehuda bar Chaviva said that Shmuel said 3 days. And there are those who say that this was not an Amoraic statement, but rather a Baraisa that is taught by Rabbi Yehuda bar Chaviva before Shmuel. Weaning takes effect after 3 days, that it's an older, more established teaching. The Gemara discusses other laws related to nursing. So the sages taught a nursing woman whose husband died within 24 months of her child's birth may not be betrothed and may not get married until 24 months from the day that the child was born. And the reason for this decree is to protect the child. If she remarries, she may become pregnant and may not be able to continue nursing. But her second husband will not be obligated to support the child who is not his son. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Yehuda permits getting married after 18 months. And Rabbi Nassan bar Yosef said these words are the same as the statement of Beis Shammai, and those words are the same as the statement of Beis Hillel, i.e. this is an ancient dispute, as Beis Shammai say 24 months and Beis Hillel say 18 months, and usually the law follows Beis Hillel. So a woman who is nursing has to wait at least 18 months from the time that her son was born until she may become married again. And now that she can't become married for 18 months, I think they're not even going to allow her to become betrothed for 18 months. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, I will decide, right, between the 18 months of Beis Hillel or the 24 months of Beis Shammai. Says Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, I will decide according to the one who says 24 months, she may marry after 21 months. Since even if she gets pregnant for the first 3 months of pregnancy, she can still continue to nurse. And according to the one who says 18 months, she may marry after 15 months, since the milk becomes spoiled due to pregnancy only after 3 months. So it's funny what Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, the redactor of the Mishna, says, I will decide, right? He's facing a community where half the people would wait 24 months for, if a woman is widowed and then she's going to remarry. and she's nursing a child, they would make her wait 24 months from when the child was born, according to Beis Shammai, or 18 months according to Beis Hillel. And that sort of divides the Jewish world in Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel's time. So he says, I will decide. The ones who say 24 months, you can get married after 21 months because that first 3 months is not going to make a difference. And the ones who say 18 months, you can actually get married after 15 months because that first 3 months is not going to make a difference. The division will continue, but you're all going to understand that you can get married 3 months earlier than you thought you could. That's my ruling. I am Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Very good. So Ula said that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. What did Rabbi Yehuda? So Rabbi Yehuda is like Beis Hillel, right? The shorter time, more lenient for her. She can remarry sooner. So Ula said the law is like Rabbi Yehuda, which is like Beis Hillel. That's what we would expect. And Mar Ukva said Rabbi Hanina allowed me to marry a nursing woman after 15 months, which would indicate the law is like Beis Hillel, as interpreted by Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. And it is related that Abaye's tenant farmer came before Abaye to ask a question. He said to him, what is the law with regard to betrothing a woman who is nursing after 15 months? Like we just heard, that's the law. They established that's the law. Several times they made rulings in the real world that that's the law. But they're still asking the question. So Abaye's farmer came before Abaye to ask the question. He said to him, what is the law with regard to betrothing a nursing woman after 15 months? Abaye said to him, well, one reason that it is permitted is that in disputes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, the law is in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda. And furthermore, this is actually a dispute between earlier sages, between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And the law is in accordance with Beis Hillel. Therefore, it should be 15 months. And in addition, Ula said, the law is in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda. So it should be 15 months. And Mar Ukva said, Rabbi Hanina allowed me to marry after 15 months. And therefore, all the more so are you permitted to betroth her, as you are only betrothing her and not marrying her, presumably after 15 months. When Abaye came before Rav Yosef and told him of the incident, Rav Yosef said to him, Rav and Shmuel both say she must wait 24 months. What happened? Right? The tradition originated in Israel and it made its way to Babylonia. The earlier sages of the Mishna mostly lived in Israel, right? They came out of Jerusalem. They were living and teaching in Yavna. And the earlier traditions, Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, Hillel was alive in the Second Temple period, and his followers, they all said 15 months, and Akiva established 15 months, and how did it become 24 months, like the minority opinion, like Beis Shammai? Somehow, when it got over to Babel, to the Jewish community in Babylonia, where Rav and Shmuel were the elders of the generation who normally argue with each other, and they both agree it's 24 months. Somehow it changed like that, so Abaye got it wrong. What happened? Rav Yosef told Abaye that Rav and Shmuel both say 24 months, excluding the day that the child was born and excluding the day that she became betrothed. When Abaye heard this, he ran 3 parsangs after his farmer. Like he ran 3 kilometers after his farmer, and some say that he ran 1 kilometer through sand. And he wanted to inform him that he should not rely on the leniency, but rather he should act in accordance with Rav and Shmuel, who prohibited the betrothal. But he did not succeed in catching up to him. And the law is 24 months. Somehow, at a later time, a leniency that was established according to Beis Hillel and Rabbi Yehuda and Akiva and Meir, all of them, Yehuda, all of that got overruled, and it became the stringency of Beis Shammai. You have to wait, a nursing mother must wait 24 months from the time the baby was born until even getting betrothed. So now Abaye said that he learned from this situation, right? Abaye got it wrong, even though he had every reason to believe he had the correct ruling. So Abaye said that he learned from this that which the sages said. A person should not permit even an egg in kutach in his teacher's vicinity. What does this mean? Kutach is like a dairy yogurty dip that would be like a delicacy that you'd have on Shabbos. And an egg is neither meat nor dairy, right? It's parv. An egg is parv. You can eat an egg in a meat cholent, and you could eat an egg with like a cheese omelet, right? With cheese. An egg is parv. It's neutral. So if somebody comes and says to you, can I dip my egg in this dairy dip? The answer is yes, of course. Says Abaye, no matter how great a sage you are, and no matter how simple the question is, if your teacher is nearby, you don't answer a question of law. You refer the questioner to your teacher as a sign of respect, right? Abaye gave an answer to his tenant farmer while living in a location that was under the sort of halakhic authority of Abaye's teacher, Rav Yosef. And Abaye says, and now I understand why this principle is so important, that you don't give even the simplest, you don't answer even the simplest question, give a ruling when your teacher is around, and he should be the one giving the rulings, because here I got it wrong, even though I had every reason to get it right, I got it wrong. And I learned that why that lesson is so important. And Abaye explained that this is not because it appears disrespectful to teach the law in one's teacher's vicinity, as this is a simple matter that does not require great knowledge of halacha, rather because he will not be successful in saying the matter correctly. Because it's not even because it appears disrespectful, it's that you'll get it wrong. Somehow you'll get it wrong. You should have referred the question to your teacher, and to teach you that somehow you'll get it wrong. And since I learned this law of Rav and Shmuel, and Abaye is saying, and somehow you'll always get it wrong. And he says, because when he heard from his teacher Rav Yosef that, well, Rav and Shmuel both say that it's 24 months, then Abaye remembered, yeah, I know, you're right. And I personally heard that law from Rav and Shmuel. Abaye knew Rav and Shmuel. He heard that law from Rav and Shmuel, and he still got it wrong. Why did he get it wrong? Because he made that mistake of giving a ruling in the vicinity of his teacher, Rav Yosef. The sages taught if a woman gave her child to a wet nurse during the waiting period, or weaned him, or the child died, she is permitted to marry immediately. Right? So they said before that a woman who is nursing has to wait 24 months until she can marry again. Why? To make sure that she doesn't get pregnant and cut off the milk that the child that's nursing from her needs. Okay, well, if the need to nurse goes away because, God forbid, the child died, or she just, handed the child over to a wet nurse who took over, and the child, accepted the wet nurse and was nursing from the wet nurse, or the woman just stopped, weaned the child, so the nursing ended. So in all these situations, she may remarry immediately, even if she was nursing and then didn't wait 24 months to remarry. she can remarry immediately. And it is related that Rav Papa said that Rav Papa and Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, thought to act in accordance with this baraisa. However, a certain old woman said to them, there was an incident in which I was involved with regard to this issue, and Rav Nachman prohibited it from me. So now we're getting an incident from the real world to teach that this seeming logical, kind leniency that a woman who is nursing, she has to wait to get married because she might get pregnant and cut off the milk of the child. Okay, but now she stopped nursing. For whatever the reason, the nursing ended. And so now she should be, because if that was the concern, now that concern is no longer there, so she should be able to be remarried. But this woman says, Rav Nachman once said, I was not permitted to remarry immediately in that situation, and now we're going to learn why. And the Gemara asks, is that so? Didn't Rav Nachman permit this for members of the exilarch's household, that once they stopped nursing the child, they would be permitted to remarry immediately? And the Gemara answers, but the exilarch's household is different, right? The head of the Jewish community in Babylonia, who are sages themselves, their household is different, since people employed by them do not renege out of fear of the consequences. And so what Rav Nachman was saying to the woman was, you just handed your child over to a wet nurse. So now you're not nursing it anymore, therefore, because you want to remarry immediately, and now you're going to be permitted. What if your wet nurse changes her mind? What if your wet nurse says, you know what, this is too hard, or I have an opportunity, to get a great job in another city, sorry, I'm leaving. And now you receive the child back, and you're going to be responsible for nursing it again. That could happen. Lest that happen, to protect against that happening, you should honor this thing. You don't get remarried for 24 months because you were nursing, even if you stopped nursing, said Rav Nachman to this woman. And for the exilarch, they would be different because, first of all, the wet nurse would not renege on her offer to nurse for somebody, so celebrated as the exilarch. And second, because they're prominent, they could always find another wet nurse. But in any case, that's a special situation. But for regular people, once they're nursing, even if the nursing ends, wait 24 months from the time the nursing began. Rav Papi said to Rav Papa and Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, and do you maintain that such a marriage is prohibited from that which is taught in a baraisa? If a woman frequently went to her father's house and had been there for a long time, or she had been angry with her husband and separated from him while still in his house, or her husband had been incarcerated in prison, or her husband had gone overseas, or her husband had been old or ill, or she was a barren woman, or she was elderly, or she was a sexually underdeveloped woman, or she was a minor girl, or if she had miscarried after the death of her husband, or if she was unfit to give birth for some other reason. Although in any of these cases there is no concern that she might be pregnant, they must all wait at least 3 months. Right? We have the general rule that when a woman's marriage ends, whether through divorce or death, she has to wait at least 3 months before marrying again. She can't marry immediately because she might be pregnant at that time, right? And even if her husband had been away for a long time in prison, or he had been ill, or she had been ill, or there was like some physical reason that made it impossible for her to be pregnant at the time that she'd like to remarry, still we make her wait 3 months because that's an unusual case, and we're not going to make a decree for the unusual case and weaken the general decree of all women who are widowed or divorced have to wait 3 months before remarrying. That's related to, and if she was nursing, she has to wait, right? So it's just making an analogy there. But in all those cases, she must wait at least 3 months. So the sages said that a woman must wait for 3 months between marriages. So there would be no doubt as to who is the father of any child that she may give birth to. And they did not distinguish between different women with regard to this decree. So likewise, we shouldn't distinguish between different women who might get pregnant or might not get pregnant. If they had been nursing, they should wait 24 months. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir, and that is the law. They all got to wait. However, Rabbi Yosef permits all the aforementioned women to be betrothed and to marry immediately, the minority opinion, since there is no concern that they might be pregnant. And Rav Nachman said that Shmuel said the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Meir with regard to all of his decrees. In every place where Rabbi Meir was stringent so as to avoid the possibility of error, the law is in accordance with Rabbi Meir. And consequently, this ruling should apply also to a nursing mother who wishes to remarry. The restriction should apply equally to a woman who had given her child to a wet nurse, or who had weaned him, or whose child had died. We're not going to make a distinction if she was nursing at all, and it's still within 24 months of when the child was born. That's how long she has to wait until the 24th month after his birth before she can betroth or marry. Now they answered him, the matter was not in our mind, meaning that we had forgotten this principle. Nevertheless, the Gemara concludes, the law is that if a nursing mother's child died, the mother is permitted to marry immediately. But if she had weaned him, she is prohibited from marrying lest she forcibly wean him prematurely. And Mar Bar Rav Ashi said, even if the child died, she is also prohibited from marrying, because if it were permitted when the child dies, there would be concern that she might kill him, right? What mother would kill her child? But if you're giving her something desirable, that she should be able to remarry immediately, move into a home, be protected, have a source of food, etc., but she can't do that while she has this child. But if it died, then she would be permitted. Then, it's like she would be incentivized to allow that child to die. And we don't want to even create a situation where that incentive could possibly exist. Mar Bar Rav Ashi said, even if the child died, she's also prohibited, because if it were permitted, she might kill him, and then in order to go and get married. And it is related that there was an incident where a woman strangled her child for this reason. But the Gemara concludes that that is not so, i.e. this incident does not affect the law. That woman was insane, and since women do not ordinarily strangle their children, one need not be concerned about this happening. No, the sages taught, if someone gave a child to a wet nurse and she agreed to nurse him for payment, she may not nurse her own child or another woman's child along with the one she's contracted to nurse, in order that she not take away milk from the child that she's being paid to nurse. Even if she fixed a small allowance for food with the payment for nursing, meaning a wet nurse has to make sure that she eats enough food so that she has a good supply of milk for the child that she's contracted to nurse. So she has to have enough funds to eat well, right? So even if she fixed a small allowance for food with the payment for nursing, she must nevertheless eat large quantities so that she will have enough milk. and she may not eat together with him, i.e. while she is nursing the child, things that are bad for her milk, right? Not just she can't, I guess she can't eat while she's nursing, but also for that whole period that she's a wet nurse, she can't consume any foods that might be considered harmful for the milk of the child. Makes sense. And the Gemara asks about this Baraisa. Now that you said that she may not nurse her own child together with her client's child, is it necessary to say that she cannot nurse another woman's child? And the Gemara answers, well, lest you say that the prohibition is limited to her child, as there is a concern that since she favors him, she will feed him more milk than the child that she's paid to nurse. But with regard to some other woman's child, if she did not have surplus milk, she would not feed him, and therefore it should be permitted. The Baraisa therefore teaches us we don't distinguish between those cases. A woman who's paid to nurse a child nurses only that child. She can't nurse any other child, not her own, not some other woman's, unless it's an emergency. The Baraisa said that even if she fixed a small allowance for food, she must eat large quantities. The Gemara asked, from where should she get this food if the allowance cannot cover it? And Rav Sheshes said, from her own funds. Because she accepted an obligation to nurse the child, she must take the necessary steps to fulfill her obligation. She wasn't going to be able to eat well enough to keep up the milk. She shouldn't have taken the job. She has to make sure that she can, on that salary, perform the job. The Baraisa said she may not eat together with him things that are bad for her milk. And the Gemara asks, what are these foods that are detrimental for milk? And Rav Kahana said, for example, hops and young green grain sprouts, small fish, and soil. Abaye said, even pumpkin and quince. Rav Papa said, even pumpkin and palm branches with small unripe dates. Rav Ashi said, even kutach and small fried fish. All these items are bad, as some cause milk to dry up and some cause milk to spoil. Now the Gemara cites other possible consequences of a mother's behavior that could affect her children. I'm almost done, so if you have questions or comments, get them in. A woman who engages in intercourse in a mill will have epileptic children. One who engages in intercourse on the ground will have long-necked children. One who steps on a donkey's dung when pregnant will have bald children. One who eats mustard during pregnancy will have gluttonous children. One who eats garden cress will have tearful children. One who eats fish brine will have children with blinking eyes. One who eats soil will have ugly children. One who drinks intoxicating liquor will have dark children. One who eats meat and drinks wine during pregnancy will have children who are healthy. Almost sounds like Woody Allen's movie. Just the opposite of what we know to be true today. But no, it's true, right? So one who eats meat and drinks wine during pregnancy will have children who are healthy. Now, obviously, if she drinks a lot of alcohol, it's going to be bad. But I think even medicine would agree that some small amount, I mean, some people will do that. In terms of all these now pieces of advice, so far there was all these negative things. If you do this, a negative thing will happen for the child. Now there's going to be a list of positive things. Now, needless to say, this list was compiled thousands of years ago through some kind of trial and error observation in the culture. And they didn't have the kind of double-blind scientific studies that we have today. However, I think it is worth bearing in mind that the sages didn't, pass on these folk traditions like they made it up and sounds like it ought to work and yeah, I'll just say it. They observed that these traditions had validity given the time, place, diet, and the whole, lifestyle that the people were living in that time. All these measures, had sort of, reliable impact in the world over the generations, or the sages wouldn't have said it. So they may be, a form of ancient folk wisdom, but it's one we would be, should not be quick to, we should listen, right? We should listen. So what do they say? One who eats meat and drinks wine during pregnancy will have children who are healthy. One who eats eggs will have large-eyed children. One who eats fish will have graceful children. One who eats celery will have beautiful children. One who eats coriander will have corpulent children. And one who eats esrogim, citron, what we that we use as part of the ritual of Sukkot, will have sweet-smelling children. It is related with regard to the daughter of King Shapur of Persia, that her mother ate esrogim, while pregnant with her, and they used to place her in front of her father on top of all the spices, as she was so fragrant. She smelled so good because they gave her esrog to eat. I guess the mother, right? While she was pregnant, that they gave her esrog to smell or to eat, and the child born of that was a princess that was so inherently fragrant. What an amazing image. All right, let's go to questions and comments on page 60. Bill, so you can suck poison from a wound, but being a vampire is out. So now that you brought it up, right? Right, so suck poison from a wound seems to be fine, all the more so because you're going to spit out that blood. You're not going to swallow it. The vampire, yeah, I guess because you're sucking that blood from another person, but they didn't make that distinction, right? So like you could suck out the blood of somebody else's wound, and even if it wasn't like a life and death emergency, that seems like it would be okay. So like obviously, converting someone into a vampire or drinking their blood as your sustenance, 100% prohibited. But the prohibition isn't because the blood was spilled into a vessel and then drunk, which for sure would be kosher. Whereas, if you swallow some blood that just comes from your bleeding gum, that is kosher. You don't have to worry about it. Yosef, according to medical sources, there are medical disorders where blood can get into breast milk. In this case, do you think the feeding of the children can override the consumption of the blood accidentally? But it doesn't even matter, right? Because the blood would come, in the milk right from the body. But your question is good, that if you express the milk into a vessel and some blood went with it, that would seem to render the mother's milk unkosher to give to the baby later if blood got in it there. Yeah, I think that's what it sounds like, but I don't know. And that family faced with that situation should certainly consult with a posek, right? With a poskening rabbi, a rabbi whose specialty is telling people what is within halacha and what is not. Bill, one who eats spicy foods will have either a child with a full head of hair at birth or a male child, depending on which of my great aunts you prefer to listen to. I love that. Just apropos of spicy foods, I used to, kind of just go for the taste of the food, and the spice seemed to be like an unnecessary commitment. Nina loves spicy food. And, spouses become more and more like each other. And I have learned to appreciate spicy food much more from my wife. And thank you, Nina, for that. Lucy, after the divorce, do the children belong to the father? Otherwise, why would a mother want to stop nursing after the divorce? She wouldn't. Of course she wouldn't. It's not so much that she would want to... she might want to stop. If there was some kind of terrible, acrimonious divorce... and for whatever reason, again, it used to be a very paternalistic society, patriarchal society. So I don't know if the woman would always get custody. Maybe she wouldn't, and like you could see like a woman would be frustrated if, like the husband was going to get full custody, but his servant was going to bring the baby over, sit there while the mom nurses and then take the baby away. How she might object to that situation. I could certainly see that. But I think that, again, this would be one of those liminal cases where they're testing their understanding of the law by imagining an extreme situation. But we all know that that's going to be so rare that any woman, would not want to care for her child. And so that's why one of those examples, was an insane woman, right, where she did harm to her child, in order to remarry. Tragically, there are insane people in the world. There are people who shouldn't be parents. But if we talk about the 99.999%, of course, we're talking about something else. That's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific on Labor Day. I'll be here for page 61. I'll be here with God's help. May we all be here with God's help. Have a great night.